Good evening. I am Andrea Hancock-Creer, president of Mu Lambda Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to HBCU Game Changers, a notable conversation. We're excited to explore the importance and impact of historical Black colleges and universities with our esteemed panel of HBCU graduates featuring Alpha Kappa Alpha member Terry Hines of Fox Sports, who you will meet in a moment. Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority has a deep commitment to HBCUs, and we actually had our genesis as an organization at an HBCU founded on the campus of Howard University in Washington, D.C. in 1908. Our international programs of service include the initiative HBCU for Life, which is designed to heighten awareness about HBCUs, promote them as an excellent option for aspiring college students, and to provide financial support to help sustain them. Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority just completed an historic feat on September 20th by raising $2.1 million in one day, doubling the original goal of raising $1 million in a day. And this is the fourth consecutive year that we have raised over $1 million in one day to support our treasured institutions. So many thanks to everyone who supported us in this effort. Mu Lambda Omega has worked to uplift HBCUs in numerous innovative ways over the course of the 4-year HBCU for Life initiative. We have partnered with other organizations to convene community events to uplift HBCUs. We have represented HBCUs at college expos for aspiring college students. We've created social media campaigns that highlight the unique culture of HBCUs, such as our spotlight on HBCU marching bands and on HBCU choirs, our spotlight on notable HBCU graduates who are game changers in the fields of education, science, business, the arts, law, government, and of course, we are exceedingly proud of AKA member and Howard University alum, Vice President Kamala Harris. And we have also documented the personal histories of our members who have attended HBCUs for our archives. So Mu Lambda Omega is doing our part to elevate this rich legacy. So on behalf of our HBCU for Life committee, headed by our chairman, Charmaine Young, we are pleased to bring you the program, HBCU Game Changers, a notable conversation. Tonight, I'm happy to introduce the Mu Lambda Omega co-chairman of this committee and the moderator of our event, Tasha Bright. Tasha is a senior manager in retail marketing in the Consumer Products, Games, and Publishing division of the Walt Disney Company and leads her team's Diversity and Inclusion Task Force. She attended Oakwood University, an HBCU, for 2 years before transferring and graduating from the University of Alabama in Huntsville with a BS degree in business administration and later obtained an MBA from the University of Phoenix. So at this time, I will turn it over to Tasha, who will introduce our esteemed panel to start this exciting conversation. Tasha?
Thank you so much, Madam President. I am excited to be here and excited to announce and to introduce our first guest panelist. So let's get started. Terry Hines is the Executive Vice President, Communications for Fox Sports, the sports television arm of the Fox Corporation. Terry serves as Chief Spokesperson responsible for leading the development of all communications, brand, and social responsibility strategies for the #1 brand in live sports entertainment. Prior to Fox, Terry Hines spent 10 successful years at Nike Inc., where she held leadership roles in both the Converse and Jordan brand divisions, and also spent another decade at Nissan North America during her career journey. She has received distinguished honors over her career and has been an invited guest lecturer at many universities, including NYU, Stanford, USC, and her alma mater, Florida A&M University, just to name a few. A native of Washington, D.C., Hines earned her Master of Arts degree in Communications from American University and a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from Florida A&M University, and is a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I'm going to ask Terry to come onto the screen. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi,
Hi, Sorotasha. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you doing?
I am wonderful. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being a part of our HBCU Game Changers, a notable conversation. I know your time is super demanding, so the fact that you are here, we are so thrilled and welcome you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sora, Andrea, and thank you to the entire Mu Lambda Omega chapter for having me here today.
You're very welcome. Okay, so we're going to get started because I know people want to hear what you have to say. So I'm going to start by giving you a softball question. It's pretty easy. And the reason why we're here, I want to know, why did you decide to go to an HBCU and how did you choose FAMU?
Wow. So how did I choose? So I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is right outside of Washington, D.C., in a very multi-ethnic neighborhood, environment, everything around me. I was surrounded by people of varying cultures. But my schooling and my education growing up, I was attending majority schools. And so when it got to the time for me to think about colleges and where I wanted to attend, I had a number of schools on the list, all of which were majority schools. None of them were HBCUs. Syracuse was on the list. I wanted to go to Syracuse because my best friend was planning to attend Syracuse. And then I have been obsessed with California and Los Angeles since I was a little girl, and UCLA was on the top of my list. And so as I was navigating these conversations with my parents, they were like, these are two great schools, but we can't afford to send you to these large institutions and those that are so far away that we can't bring you home. So let's revisit this list. Why don't we have Howard University, on the list, being, it's very close to home. And I have a father and his brother, my uncle, both of whom graduated from Howard University, both architects. They're amazing in their fields. And they're like, why isn't Howard on the list? And I wanted to go away to school. So lo and behold, I get a scholarship offer from Florida A&M University. And to be quite frank with you, I didn't know much about FAMU back then, but my parents said, you know what? It's an HBCU, it's a historically Black college. We think we should take a look. Let's take a trip to Florida and visit the school. And once I did, Tasha, it literally changed my entire perspective. I ended up choosing FAMU as my, undergraduate institution, and it was the best decision that I ever made.
Wow, that's amazing. Also amazing that your parents both went to Howard, your father and your
uncle, yeah.
And you didn't choose that. I know a lot of family members, they're like, no, you're going to go to my school. So that's pretty amazing that you stuck to your grounds. I love it. I love it. Okay.
And Howard is an amazing institution. Don't get me wrong. I have a number of friends and other family members from Howard University. It's incredible. So I got to give love to all my Bison friends out there.
Yes, we can't forget about those Bisons. So I would say, by all accounts, you have been very successful in your career. You've built an amazing career. And so keeping with that and your decision to go to FAMU, as an undergrad, could you have imagined that this would be your career path? Or would you say that the building blocks of who you are today started at FAMU?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. It started there. Now, can I say unequivocally that I would be sitting in this chair and having this conversation with you, or that I'd be a senior leader at Fox or Fox Sports? I don't know if it was, narrowly that specific, but I can tell you, I knew I would be successful in whatever path that I chose. You see, I am a product of the late, great Dean Sybil Mobley, who was the dean of the School of Business and Industry at Florida A&M. I'm a product of the late President Frederick Humphreys, who transformed that university during the time and the era that I was there. I was part of a university that, large in part, people looked like me, when I went to school, and I knew that I could be anything that I wanted to be, and that I wanted to set my sights on. Also, when you go to school with people that look just like you or that surround you, you are pushed differently, and you are pushed in a way to excel and to achieve greatness. I don't know that I would have found in another place. And for me, specifically being a student of the School of Business in particular, there are a number of professional development programs that prepared us for our future and prepared us to have successful careers in corporate America. We had without getting too lengthy, we had student-run programs that we would bring senior executives, CEOs from Fortune 500 and some Fortune 100 companies to our school on a weekly basis. And we would sit down and create boardroom discussions. And I happened, by my junior year, I was leading a program called Forum. Forum was a program where we had CEOs from these Fortune 500 or 100 companies that would come and speak to the entire student body. At the time that I was at FAMU, it's think of about 1,000 students in an auditorium. And the CEO was the keynote. At the end of the keynote, the students were required as a part of the class to ask questions. The questions had to be thoroughly researched and thoroughly vetted prior to being able to even be allowed to ask the question. I was the executive vice president of Forum as a junior at that time, so no surprise. And so I had to stand up at the end of Forum and evaluate the quality of those questions by the students that asked them. So I learned very early how to stand up in front of 1,000 people and deliver a critique, give constructive feedback, and begin coaching and mentoring. So I learned that at a very, very early age. And so when you ask me about whether it was the foundation, that's how I answer yes.
I definitely can attest to that. I definitely believe, and I think anyone who has attended an HBCU would say the same, that the amount of effort that they pour into you, making you feel and believe that you can do anything, and the resources that they pull from to make sure that you know that, and try to sustain that is immeasurable. And I think that those are the things that we take away and we walk into our different careers and families and communities. And those are things that, we all gain from, fortunately attending an HBCU.
And I would just to add to that, just a little bit, is to give credit to the professors and the faculty that really pour into you. It's not just your fellow students that are lifting you up and pushing you to be better. It's those professors that are taking you under their wing, some of them bringing you to their homes to sit down and have dinner. The president, Dr. Humphreys, used to invite students to his home on a very regular basis. And so even though you are far away from home, many of us were far away from our homes, we felt a part of a community that cared about who we were as students and contributors to society.
Absolutely agree. Shout out to Dr. Hyman at Oakwood University who did that for me. So I will say that. Okay, so going on to our next question. In the last year or so, the country has taken notice of prominent Black leaders, for the most part, who have in common their pride for their HBCU. Not to, just to name a couple, obviously, we're super proud of Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, Stacey Abrams, just to name a couple. As a Black woman who is a high-level executive for the #1 brand in live sports entertainment, Fox Sports, how have you navigated discussing your HBCU experience with colleagues or other professionals who may now have a newfound interest and may want to know more about your experience at a HBCU?
Well, I would just add on to the notables because I would be remiss. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, who is a graduate of Florida A&M University. So shout out to Mayor Keisha. But how do I raise awareness? I walk every single day as a proud Rattler, right? So I am a proud graduate of an HBCU, and I don't shy away from talking about my experience or telling my story. The wonderful thing about, and there are a couple of things, but the wonderful thing about Fox Sports specifically is that we have a number of some of my colleagues and many of our talent on air that are graduates of HBCUs. So whether that's Shannon Sharp, who's a graduate of Savannah State University, Michael Strahan, Texas Southern, he was recruited by Texas Southern, Pam Oliver, who is a graduate of my alma mater, Florida A&M A&M University, and Gus Johnson, who is a graduate of Howard University, and so many more that I don't have time to name. But you're surrounded by this greatness, right? When I come to work every day, if you go into the green room for Fox Sports, which we call the avocado room, you will see a painting of Pam Oliver running track because she ran track at FAMU, right? So it is all around you. And also the wonderful thing about Fox Sports is that it gives us as employees internally a platform and an opportunity to talk about these experiences. So I can think of, a panel discussion that our Inclusion Council hosted earlier this year during Black History Month, which shined a light on HBCUs and other executives within the company that are graduates of HBCUs. And I remember a number of my colleagues who are not people of color tuning in because they wanted to learn more. They wanted to understand our experience. They wanted to understand the athletics. They wanted to learn more about the bands, right? And it was a really fun conversation. And I also have the privilege of being the executive sponsor for Fox Black Plus, which is the employee networking group for all of Fox nationwide. So not just sports, it's all of our divisions across the company, from news to entertainment and more. And that group is doing some amazing work and shining a light on HBCUs as well. So anybody who wants to hear my experience, I will tell them. Anyone who asks me where I graduate from, I say I am a proud graduate of Florida A&M University on the highest of 7 hills in Tallahassee, Florida. You can get me going in a nanosecond in any room, in any, in any environment.
That's what's amazing, is to hear that you're not one, you're the only. There are many that are, other graduates of HBCUs that you go to work with, other colleagues of yours, or other talent that you run across, which is super important, because then you have something, even though you didn't attend the same school, you have a shared somewhat experience of attending an HBCU. And I just think it makes work and, that balance of coming into work and having these other colleagues that much more, interesting, and, feeling like I don't have to explain to just everyone by myself what this feels like. But then, collectively, you can then share that with your other colleagues who may not have attended HBCU, or who might be allies and want to know a little bit more information.
It creates a quick and instant connection, with people when you have, shared experiences. And it makes it that much more comforting and easy to build relationships and camaraderie at work, which is wonderful.
Love it. Love it. So also in the last year, we've seen more high profile athletes decide to attend HBCUs. Instead of playing for Big Ten schools, et cetera. Michael B. Jordan last year hosted an HBCU basketball tournament in his hometown called Hoop Dreams Classic. Mm-hmm. So basically, there's a lot of attention going there from the sports area to HBCUs. Doing what you do you have an opinion on how this will change the sports game and the attention this may now give to HBCUs?
I hope it brings even more awareness and attention, to HBCUs, and the fact that you have fantastic athletes that are playing in great programs, collegiate programs, sports programs at HBCUs. There have been a number of students who are being recruited by, majority schools that are at the last minute, changing their decision, to go to an HBCU. So it's not to say that you can't be a star athlete, at a historically Black college and not be recruited by any of these professional sports leagues. Michael Strahan's my colleague. He's an example of that. And there's so many more examples of that. So I love the fact that the spotlight is changing. Other athletes, like one of my former colleagues when I worked at Nike and the Jordan brand, Chris Paul, is working on, his own HBCU program and shining a light on a number of HBCUs. And there are a number of athletes that are doing the same. As a broadcaster, I get excited when I hear and I get called into meetings because we're going to be broadcasting, Howard University's basketball game in the wintertime, during basketball season. And I turn on the TV and I see, Hampton University playing Howard just, a week ago on another network. So I am really loving the spotlight and I hope it continues.
The more, the merrier. We can't see or get enough of it. I agree with that.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to switch and talk about mentorship, which I love. I think that many of us have been have gotten to where we are because of mentorship, and it's super important. I love being a mentor. I love being mentored, having mentees, and so what I'll say is, I remember when I first met you a few years back when I still worked at Fox, full disclosure. And my first impression was, okay, she's fabulous.
Thank you.
She's doing big things in her career. She's very humble. She's approachable. And to top it off, she's my sorority sister. So I was like, check, check, check. Okay, I need to get to know who this woman is. That was my first thing. And I don't know if I've said this to you either then or now, but my feelings were that it's important to have you here. It was important to have you there to be that example for young Black women and Black men who can see that you're not just filling this role, this high level executive role, but you are owning it and doing an amazing job at it. Giving all of us the example to point to and say, if Terry can do this, I can do this as well. So my question is, what is your approach to mentorship? Without naming names, what are some of the best ways others have mentored you in your career?
Oh, that's such a loaded question. I don't know how much time we have. I literally could talk. I could give a seminar on mentoring and mentorship. I think for me, I follow the examples that have been set for me. I can think of so many examples, Tasha, but I think about a time in my career when I was looking to make a pivot. I was in a job where I was bored, I was overqualified, and I needed some new challenge in order to keep propelling me forward. And I was fortunate to have a gentleman who was a person of color, who took me under his wing because I was in marketing. I wanted to learn about the field of public relations, which he was in. I went to school for business, as I said previously. I didn't know much about what PR was about, but I knew it involved writing and I knew it involved public speaking. And I thought I was, pretty good at that. But now you add in the mix of media and all of these other things. And to make a long story short, he took me under his wing and he really coached me at an early stage in my career to understand this new field, to give me an opportunity to potentially pivot at some point in the future. At a couple months after that, after we started working together, and this was like, think of it as a stretch assignment, right? So I had my day-to-day job, but on the side, I was sort of his shadow or his mentee. And I would say about 5 months into this mentee-mentor relationship, we took a business trip. I was in DC at the time. We took a business trip out to California, where our company was headquartered. And he introduced me to his boss's boss. It's a very important piece of the story. He introduced me to his boss's boss. And that gentleman, I had, you have that elevator speech, get like 30 second, 2 minute, whatever it was. Well, I had about 5-6 minutes, right, in this executive's office to talk about who I was. And this office wasn't just me and him one-on-one. There were other people in the office that were buzzing around because of an event or something that they were planning towards. And to make a long story short, I gave my 5-minute elevator pitch, who I am, why you should care about me in the 5 minutes that I'm standing in front of you. Great. Nice to meet you. Go back to your, respective life. And we get back, back to DC, back to the East Coast and go about the business of, I was at Nissan at the time. So go about the business of marketing Nissan. And 30 days after that meeting, my mentor resigned.
Wow.
30 days. Almost 30 days to the day, he resigned. And what he did, he resigned and he went to another amazing company and took on some amazing, fantastic job. But it wasn't about him resigning and where he was going. It was about what he did next. And what he did is that he called the boss's boss, not the boss, but the boss's boss. And he called the boss's boss. And he said, look, you're going to have to backfill me. And maybe you're going to find somebody, locally in Washington, D.C. that, has industry knowledge, experience. Maybe you're going to find someone within the company that maybe they're going to relocate from California out to D.C. Doubt it. But rather than waste your time, remember that young lady that I brought into your office 30 days ago, Derry Hines? I think you should give her a shot. I think you should take a chance on her. No, she doesn't have a traditional, background in journalism or public relations, and we didn't hire her into this role. And no, she doesn't have a degree in journalism or any of that we typically look for. But there's something about that young woman. She is young, she is innovative, she's creative, and I think she will bring something new to my role that you really need. And Tasha, without an interview, I got the job. And it set the course of my future career off catapulted, in a way that I couldn't have imagined. So when I think about how to be a good mentor, whether it's to you or anybody else, I think about what my mentor at that time did for me. Now, can you always be in a position to introduce someone to the boss's boss and open the door and create a new job and all of these things? It may not look like that, but the point is he took an interest in me and he breathed life into me to show me that what seemed impossible was possible, not only possible, but attainable, not only attainable, but you can be successful at it. He showed me that that was possible. So that is the type of mentor that I try to be every single time that I am able to show up and that I choose to show up. So I don't know how else to answer that. That is important. And to this day, it does not matter where you are in your career, how high you aspire to, or whatever height you attain. I always continue to be in a space of being a mentee, sorry. I am still mentored to this day. My mentors just, have, I say, better jobs, but or careers, but you always should be in a position of learning. Yes. I am always remaining in a state of learning no matter what I'm doing. I learn from my team each and every day. I don't profess to know it all. I think I'm a pretty good coach, but I don't profess to know it all. So I think also to be a good mentor, you have to be a good mentee. You have to want to learn and to listen all the time and to help make yourself better. So I could keep going and preaching. Like I said, I could do a seminar.
I love it. I said mentorship is one of my favorite topics because I agree with that. We all should stay in the space of wanting to be mentored, always learning, always thriving. And I just think that's how we uplift one another by giving those who are coming behind us the example and the knowledge of what we've just gone through so that we can help them along the way. And then how do we continue to navigate as we go through these careers? I love it. And I could just talk to you forever about it. I can.
Yes.
We definitely want to get to part 2. I want to just say, if you have any questions for Terry, please put it in the Q&A because she's going to come back at the end of this and we're going to have a Q&A session. But for right now, what I'm going to do is we're going to say bye to you for right now. Yes. Thank you so much for all the information. It's been excellent and wonderful. And then we're going to bring you back toward the end to talk more about, to do the Q&A session. So right now, we're going to now go into the second part of our panel. And I'm going to do some introductions. And that is starting with Velma Carr-Marshall. Velma received her BA degree in business education from Clark College in Atlanta, Georgia, now known as Clark Atlanta University, and her Juris Doctorate degree from Atlanta Law School. She is an inactive member of the State Bar of Georgia. In March 2021, Velma retired from the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority after 38 years as Deputy Executive Officer, Real Estate. Velma and her staff were responsible for acquiring all of the real estate needed for the multi-billion-dollar heavy and light rail transit systems that currently operates in the LA County. Velma is a Golden Sister and lifetime member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and is currently active in the Mu Lambda Omega chapter in Culver City, California. Next on our panel, we have Sharice M. Cryer, who is an attorney and activist and serves as a very vocal advocate for the HBCU and Black communities. A Los Angeles native, she is a 2006 graduate of the Howard University School of Law and 2002 graduate of UC Berkeley. In law school, Ms. Cryer was selected as a member of the Howard Law Journal, and in 2006, her Law Journal article entitled "Stop Loss and the Black Door Draft, Allegations of Modern Day Slavery and Contract Violations" was published. For over 5 years, Ms. Cryer was a sports agent and is currently practicing in the areas of compliance, entertainment, sports, and litigation. Ms. Cryer is licensed to practice in both California and New York and is a proud active member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Mu Lambda Omega chapter. Last but certainly not least to this panel is Taylor Owens, and she's a product marketer of the Addressable Solutions Division of Disney Advertising Sales. Taylor attended Hampton University, where she graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Marketing. Taylor's notable on-campus responsibilities included being a student representative for James T. George School of Business, president of the Marketing Honor Society, and team lead for Hampton University's Athletic Marketing Department. During her junior year, she joined Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the Gamma Theta chapter, in spring of 2019. After her undergraduate tenure, Taylor obtained her Master of Science in Marketing at American University in June of 2021. So she's a new graduate. Taylor is currently an active member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated in the Mu Lambda Omega chapter. Ladies, I'm going to ask for you to join me on the screen. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I know that you are just as excited to be here as we are to have you. So thank you. And I'm just going to go ahead and get started. I know I'm on a high from our last conversation, and I'm excited to get into this one. So I will start by saying, I think we all know that HBCUs over the last year have had a heightened awareness. In fact, Forbes noted that 2020 was the year of HBCUs. That may be due to all of the attention that was garnered on them for a number of reasons. But as alum representing 3 different HBCUs, you can share with us what made you decide that an HBCU was right for you? And I am going to start with Velma to answer this question.
Thank you, Tasha, and hello, everyone. Truthfully, growing up in the South back in the 60s, there were very limited choices for us to go to any school other than an HBCU. Living in a small town, my parents wanted us to be close to home. And so once we graduated from high school, we were looking at schools nearby, which meant it was either Tuskegee Institute in Tuskegee or one of the HBCU schools in Atlanta. So we chose Clark for a number of reasons, and basically it was the best choice. We met most criteria of being close to home, and we were in a safe environment that our parents felt comfortable.
Awesome, awesome. Sharice, I'm going to come to you next to answer this question.
Good evening, everyone. So when I applied to law school, I wanted a different experience for my PWI, and I wanted to focus on the East Coast. So I did cast my net wide. I applied to schools mostly up and down the East Coast, and I think 1 or 2 Northern California schools. Howard Law School was actually the first school to send my acceptance letter, and it came with a scholarship. My sister was matriculating at Howard at the time, and my father is a 1982 graduate of Howard undergrad. And so after looking at my choices, I did choose Howard, and I actually wasn't sure if it was the right choice at first, but I had a dream eventually that actually confirmed I was in the right place. So that's why I chose Howard.
I love it. And that scholarship is helpful. So I heard that. Taylor, for you to answer the same question, how did you choose?
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in California. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I made up my mind that I wanted to attend a college on the East Coast. So I knew that an HBCU campus would serve as that home away from home. And ironically, Hampton University is known as home by the sea. So I expected to be genuinely supported, especially by faculty and professors that actually look like me. So in essence, to face fewer microaggressions that may be in typical institutions. And also just knowing that successful HBCU narrative of different figures such as Booker T. Washington, who was an alumnus of Hampton University, who went on to become the founder of another HBCU, Tuskegee Institute, which is now Tuskegee University. And just knowing different statistics such as HBCUs producing 80% of Black judges, 40% of Black engineers was just amazing to me. And then all in all, similar to Sharice, I received a prestigious scholarship from Hampton University. So they definitely showed me that they were interested in my mind as well.
I love that. I love that. I think most of you have already spoken to this, but Taylor, since you were just speaking, Can you give any examples of, did you have any influences? You might have spoke about some of the things that, intrigued you about the HBCU, obviously scholarships and, the prestigious people that might have matriculated from these schools, but were there any other influences from counselors, family, or friends that made you say, I'm going to an HBCU?
Absolutely. My influence was right at home. I attribute my decision of attending an HBCU inspired by both of my parents. They were graduates of Grambling State University, which is in Grambling, Louisiana. And I use the word inspire because just being an HBCU graduate is awesome, but it wasn't enough. I was able to see their fruit and their character. And in essence, I was really admired by their professionalism, their community involvement, and just the wisdom they had. And as a high schooler, you really want to know what route your role models took in case you want to do the same thing. And if I was not inspired by my parents, I would have looked to high school faculty and church members to communicate the success of HBCUs, especially the fun campus events like the week-long homecoming culture.
Oh, yes, homecoming. We all love homecoming. Okay, so Velma, I'm going to ask you to answer that same question. In the time where you went to Clark, were there any, influences in your life, family, friends,
Well, yes, like Taylor, my sister enrolled in Clark College the year before. She graduated the year before me. And so other people from West Point, again, that's a very small town in Georgia, had gone to Clark. It was sort of like the school of the West Point folks. So I really didn't think of any other school except to go to Clark. And one of our former principals encouraged my parents to send us to Atlanta to school because he felt we should be exposed to a more urban, cultural, diverse city rather than going to a smaller school like Tuskegee in a small town. So the influence of going to the big city, the influence of my sister being there before me was one of the greatest influence. And we had other folks who had graduated from Clark who lived in our hometown.
I love it. I love it. Again, anyone, if you, for the audience, if you have questions for these, for this wonderful panel, please make sure you put in the Q&A so they can answer it toward the end. Many people view HBCUs as gardens to grow our future leaders, which I happen to agree with. And I am coming to you, Sharice, on this question. In your time, in your unique situation, you attended Howard University for law school after graduating from UC Berkeley. Please describe for us the type of guidance and support you received on or off campus while attending Howard Law.
I can go on and on about that, but I will try to consolidate because we were well nurtured at Howard Law School. So in general, law school does not prepare you for the practicalities of being a lawyer, and that was not the case at Howard. So at Howard, there was definitely an emphasis on excellence in attire. We had to wear collared shirts to court. That was very important for our professors. In legal writing, excellence was stressed. And today I am still surprised when I see briefs or pleadings from other attorneys that have typos in it, because that would not fly in our law school. In the first semester of law school, we were not allowed to access the internet searches through Westlaw or LexisNexis. So that's a common tool that lawyers use. We actually had to use the reference books in the library so that we can actually get an understanding of the foundation of case law. Also, we had access to pretty much every single law firm in the country. If you look at vault rankings, 1 through 100, almost all 100 law firms came to interview at Howard, and I interviewed with the majority of those law firms. And there are only 7 other schools, law schools in the country, who have the same access to law firms. Also, our network is very extensive. When I interviewed at law firms, most of the lawyers that I interviewed with were from Howard University. It was rare that I did not interview with someone from Howard Law. And HBCUs are personable in nature, as opposed to PWIs. And I'll give an example. When I went to the career service officer my first year in law school, she took my resume and she literally pulled out a ruler and she said, you need to line your resume up appropriately. And that is still the guide that I use today for my resumes if I'm applying for a job. I'm still in contact with my law professors and some of the admin that were at Howard. It was just a really nurturing environment. And that's something that I was educated in my PWI, but it was not a nurturing environment.
It's the preparation for me. It's the, making sure that we're not about to send you out here without knowing everything you need to know and then some. That's the type of love and nurturing that, you receive at HBCU. I think you just explained that perfectly. And, you went for a graduate program, for a law program, and still receive this. Sometimes we think that, it's just in undergrad that you receive these things. No. You attend from a more professional program, you get the same nurturing environment. So thank you for sharing that.
And can I add?
Absolutely.
Can I just add one more thing? I'm sorry. I would be remiss if I forgot to mention this. So I graduated Howard Law in 2006, and rankings and accreditation for the American Bar Association really depend on bar passage rates. It's very important. My class of 2006, I want to brag on us. The majority of us passed the bar the very first time. I myself passed New York and Massachusetts the first time. I sat for both bars at the same time, and I eventually passed California. So the notion that you don't learn or you're not as prepared at a HBCU is false. And I actually went back and told the dean after I passed the bar that Howard had over-prepared me for not just practicing law, but really sitting for the bar and being successful as a lawyer.
Excellent. I think that's very, very important to make sure to get out there. What I will say about this panel that I love is that we have different generations represented, which I think gives a really good perspective for anyone, our audience that might be joining, to kind of see that, we have some who have recently graduated and just starting in their career, some who have graduated not too long ago and are working in their career, and some who have paved the way, put in their dues, and have been able to retire. When you think about how you approach, building a career and deciding what to commit yourself to outside of work life, how did your experience at your HBCU help shape that? And I'm going to start with Taylor, if you can start by answering this question.
Yes, so a little bit of background. In high school, I did what I could to get decent grades. However, I did do the bare minimum with campus involvement. But while at Hampton, I was encouraged to be involved and active, and not just from my peers, but also from my friends. So once I actually started making a difference on campus, I started getting involved in organizations that were service-based. Being a part of Christian ministries was really big for me. So I became a member and I learned how to serve different peers. I became an upper class mentor for first generation freshmen to help them navigate the college landscape. So just all those experiences definitely helped cultivate my servant leadership and passion for service-based organizations. And then in regards to my actual marketing education, we were constantly called to present thorough business plans to the class. And from that, I developed an interest in my marketing career. And I decided to join the athletic marketing team. I became president of Mu Capital, which was a marketing honor society. And then to actually obtain a career, I was never left to my own devices. Our professors and career center were constantly providing internship opportunities and resume guidance so I could position myself in the job market as exceptional, which then helped me to gain internship experience.
I love that. I was never left to my own devices. There's always someone there to kind of help guide along. I don't have to utilize that one. So I'm going to come to you, Thelma, to answer that question.
Yeah, I continue to be influenced by my experience at Clark, although I graduated 53 years ago. As a student at Clark, I was nurtured by by the faculty. My business instructor helped me to form life skills. That is, being on time, being responsible, following through on commitments, and creating a good work ethic. These traits served me well in my career. I started out as a business major with a minor in education, hoping to be a teacher. But my career path led me to a career in real estate and public transportation. So I think the skills that we learn at HBCUs go way beyond just a textbook and also beyond and remove any limits we put on what we want to do in life. Also, I became a member of AKA and gained lifelong friends that I'm still connected with. Both my experience at Clark and at AKA have contributed to my self-worth, my concern for my local and global community, and to having a commitment to give back and to be a mentor to others.
I will definitely say, and we are going to, I'm going to ask Sharice to answer this question too before we move on to our Q&A portion. But that's the section, the part that I love about HBCU experience is the connection you have with the people you meet there are lifelong. Literally, there's not a day that goes by that I have my circle of friends that we matriculated through with at Oakwood, and we are still in contact. We have been through weddings and baby showers and, family events and all of that. And those are the things that are wonderful that you just don't take for granted. So Sharice, I'm going to ask you to answer that question as well before we go to the Q&A.
I always tell people that Berkeley educated me and Howard made me into a woman. And I got a great education at both. But Howard really, really instilled in me the importance of integrity. Your name will open doors for you that your experience may not. And, in life, in my extracurricular activities, in my advocacy, my name sometimes is in the room before I am. And so it's really, really important to maintain integrity. But I always keep in mind when I'm doing something in my words and in my actions, is this going to reflect bad upon Howard? Because I would hate for anyone to say, well, that's what those Howard people do, or that's what those Howard graduates do. I always try to keep in mind, I'm a leader amongst Howard alumni, and I'm a leader in my community, and I really need to be mindful of what I'm saying and doing so that it does not reflect badly upon my community.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. We could go on for days for sure, because there's so much experience and so many stories that we want to share. We need more than the hour to make it happen. But I want to make sure that we get to the Q&A, because I know some of the audience has some questions and we definitely want to get those answers. So I'm going to also invite Terry back with us for this portion, so we can have everyone join in and answer. And so there is one I'm going to get to first. And this is from Taylor Montgomery. And her question was, if you were to call allies and non-HBCU grads to action, how would you suggest they go about supporting HBCUs? Example, donate, research, promote on media. So anyone who wants to, jump in and answer that one first, be my guest.
I can answer. There's a thought that, some of the PWIs are better. There's always comparison, and there's an assumption that because someone went to a certain school that they may not be as intelligent. And, that really impacted my experience when I was interviewing for law firms. Someone actually asked me, why would you go from a school like Berkeley or a school like Howard? My thing to allies, anyone who graduated from an HBCU is over prepared for whatever position that you put them in. And they're going to go out there and compete with anyone from any other institution. So I would ask them to believe in those students who are coming from HBCUs and not treat them as tokens. They are more prepared, in my opinion, than some of the other students, and to treat them as equally as you would some of the other students coming from some of the other schools that might be traditionally considered prestigious.
Got it. And just so in case anyone is unfamiliar with the term PWI, PWI is just predominantly white institution, for anyone who is wanting to know that. Does anyone else want to answer that question?
I just want to second what Sora Cherie said about the over-preparedness, right? So as a graduate, you are of an HBCU, you are completely over-prepared. So when you walk into a room, no matter what that room looks like, you know that you're supposed to be in that room. You know that you are the best and the most qualified at whatever it is that makes you or invites you to be there. So you don't walk into a room questioning, why should I be here? Who am I? Am I better than? Those thoughts don't enter your head. And I would encourage not people who are not of color or not graduates of HBCUs to recognize that. I would ask them to be curious. Ask questions. You know, you talked earlier, Sorotasha, about our various leaders of our country. So whether it's, you know, Sora Kamala, or Stacy and others who are graduates of HBCUs, look into their background, look at why they made the decisions that they did to go to the institutions that they chose. And it will tell you a little bit about them, and it will tell you a little bit more about these institutions and why they are so special.
I think there's one other factor from my generation, because we were maybe the first graduates to get into certain majority white firms or in public agencies. And so we were driven to show that we were overly prepared, that we were perfect for the job. We put in long hours, we worked harder to show that our background, our knowledge skills were equal and better than theirs. So that was an influence from being at an HBCU. We took the first road into those institutions and were successful.
Excellent, excellent. If there's no others, I'll go into the next question. The next question says, my daughter graduated from Clark Atlanta University, and yes, they did take care of my daughter as she was prepared for her success to date. She did tell me that it was one aspect, a percentage of instructors did not look like her. At times it was difficult to learn from them. Is this the norm for a certain percentage of non-Black instructors at HBCUs?
I can answer this question. Yes, it can be a norm. I know that was also the case for Hampton University, but one positive aspect from that was it really caused the students to come together and create a network amongst ourselves to take the initiative to understand. And even if that was being a force to come to the professor if we didn't understand their teaching style, for them to present it in a way that we could actually understand. So maybe they had to alter something, but it did force us to become more of a network and lean onto one another. So that was definitely a positive side.
I think that may be a situation in recent years because the schools are making strong efforts to have a lot of PhDs on their staff. Back in the 60s, that was not necessarily the case. There were mostly Black instructors. But I can see that over the years, to increase the credibility of the schools, they may have to go outside to get a lot of PhDs and specialized professors in certain new categories that they were offering.
I would also add, you know, to dispel the misnomer that all historically Black colleges only have Black students, right? So for Florida A&M University, I don't know what the stats are now, but at the time that I was in school, it was 85% Black. That means 15% of other nationalities, which was wonderful. So if you're going to class and your professor doesn't look like you, welcome that new way of learning in some cases, because the real world doesn't all look like this.
Great point. Great point.
I wanted to also add a historical fact that, you know, at a time where institutions of higher education were not hiring Jewish professors back in the day, during the Holocaust period, HBCUs were havens for professors who were Jewish. So, you know, we've always been welcoming. If you look at the sports team, even when my dad played for Howard back in the day, everyone did not look like us. But there's an opportunity there if, you know, a lot of students at Howard are very vocal advocates. That's one thing we do learn at Howard. And when they see departments or administration and they want more people to look like them, they do ask. And we do have an initiative at the university right now that all of our deans will be women of color. But I think it's eye-opening to me when I got to Howard to see how many non-Black students there were in my class.
Definitely that. I know we have a few more questions before we wrap up. And this question is from Tamika Williams. And it says, hello, my question for the panel is, what advice would you give to those who have not attended an HBCU, but would like to in some way be involved with this amazing culture and experience?
From the homecoming.
That's a good one. That's a good one. If you go to a homecoming, that'll kind of indoctrinate you real quick.
It'll change your life.
Yes.
It really will.
Yes, homecoming. Okay, that's one. Anyone else have any other advice?
There are still graduate programs. A lot of the HBCUs, Florida A&M, Howard, Southern, they all have graduate programs. Some of them are now being offered online. So if you have ever wanted to attend an HBCU, I tell my friends all the time, it's not too late. You can still send a son, a daughter, a niece, a nephew there. And then at least our local alumni chapters are very welcoming. When we get back in person, we always invite people from the community to come to our event. So you're more than welcome to come to any activities that we might be having.
Well, another way is the schools always need additional support financially. So by donating and supporting to HBCUs, you're extending the experience to those who are there, and possibly somewhere down the line, you may be able to directly support someone in your family by going to go to an HBCU. So contributing would be a great help and show that you have the support and you've given support to those schools.
Absolutely that. I'm going to get to this one last question before we wrap, and this is from Erica, and her question was, were there moments in your careers where you felt questioned as women of color, but having the HBCU investment in your development allowed you to let your work answer any questions or assumptions?
Well, I can share an experience of being sometime the only Black, the only woman in a situation working with engineers and contractors and construction people. They tend to minimize the influence of a woman. But I think the encouragement that I received and the training I received to be proud of who I am, where I am, and to feel that I'm in the room by right, that it gives you that extra strength to be a spokesperson, to be confident. Confidence is so important. And I think we did get that as part of going to a HBCU, because you were in a safe environment and you felt that you could express yourself. And so once we got into the workplace, that carried over. So sometimes being the first means you have to establish that you are where you're supposed to be and you have a right to be there.
Love it. Any other last words on that one?
I would just accent, second rather, Sora Velma's comment. I think it's, maybe it's in part my family upbringing. Maybe it's also definitely part of being a graduate of an HBCU, but I've actually never felt uncomfortable or like I was in the wrong room when I walked into a room of people that don't look like me. I would say for most of my career, I walked into male-dominated spaces, whether it was working in the automotive industry or working in sports. And it is the confidence, right? It is that upbringing within you, that knowledge within you that makes you feel like, I own this room. I am supposed to be here. And I walk with grace, and I walk with the professors and the educators and the family members and the ancestors that have gone before me to know and understand that I belong here, or I belong in this space. So I don't know, being a graduate of an HBCU is all that I know. So, I can only speak to my experience, but I would definitely say that aids in helping me. And I would argue all of us here on this panel, being confident in ourselves, in our abilities, and walking into rooms that don't look like us.
And I will say that that is probably the best note to end on. Although I'm like, oh, I want more, and I'm sure everyone else does too, but we want to be respectful of everyone's time. And so before you go though, we definitely have a survey we want you to fill out. It's going to be in the chat. It'll also probably come up after this call or after this webinar ends. Please fill that out. We want to hear from you what you think about this particular program so we can do more like them. And don't leave yet, because we're going to bring on our chapter president to give us some wrap up and some upcoming events we have. But before she comes on, I just want to say thank you to this amazing panel. You guys are amazing. The knowledge that you have brought is invaluable, and I know everyone has enjoyed it. I have enjoyed having you, and thank you for participating in our Game Changer Notable Conversation event. With that note, we're going to bring on Andrea Hancock-Creer to give us our closing remarks and to let us know any upcoming events that we have.
I just want to thank all of you for that rich discussion. I really hope that you got some pearls that you'll take with you and share widely about the virtues and opportunities that abound within HBCU education. So I want to thank our panelists, our MLO members, Velma Marshall, Sharice Cryer, Taylor Owens, for sharing your experiences with us. It was so amazing. And I want to give a special thank you to our featured guest, Terry Hines, for your valuable insights and for joining us in this notable conversation about HBCUs. And last but certainly not least, I want to thank our moderator, Tasha Bright, for leading us through our fireside chat and for all of your hard work behind the scenes to create this wonderful forum. I'd also like to thank our technology team, Tamika Smith, Nicole Clark-Reed, and our technology chairman, Caroline Smith, for your amazing support for a seamless program. So to stay abreast of all that we have going on, follow Mu Lambda Omega Chapter on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So until we meet again, be safe, tell someone something you learned about HBCUs this evening, and speak an encouraging word about the future to the next young person that you encounter. And so on behalf of our HBCU for Life initiative and our amazing chairman, Charmaine Young, and co-chair, Tasha Bright, this concludes our program. Good night.